I'm going to walk through the Meeting Owl 3 and its Whiteboard Owl add-in because, like many of you, I've seen a lot of hype around intelligent conference devices, and I wanted to know whether the price tag actually translates into day-to-day value. If you're still on the fence about spending a few $100s on a single camera system that promises to replace a whole room of gear, this review is for you. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the past week setting it up in a small co-working space, testing it during a remote brainstorming session, and then swapping it into a home office for a series of client calls, so I can tell you exactly how it behaves when you actually need it. First, let's talk about the problem most buyers face. You want a plug-and-play solution that works with Zoom, Teams, Google Meet, and the like, but you also need something that captures a whiteboard without a separate capture card. The Meeting Owl 3 claims to do both, but the real question is whether it does them well enough to replace a dedicated PTZ camera and a separate document camera. The biggest risk is buying a smart device that sounds clever, but ends up being a source of frustration when the software glitches or the hardware can't keep up with a lively discussion. The Owl's biggest strength is its 360-degree audiovisual capture. The built-in microphone array actually follows the person speaking, which means you no longer have to manually pan a camera or ask participants to stay in a specific spot. In the co-working space we tried, the device automatically zoomed in on the person presenting their laptop, then smoothly shifted to the whiteboard when they turned to write. That transition felt natural enough that I could focus on the conversation instead of fiddling with controls. For a team that rotates speakers, frequently think a product design sprint or a weekly stand-up, this automatic focus saves a lot of back and forth with the IT department. The Whiteboard Owl attachment is where the system tries to earn its hybrid badge. It sits right on top of a standard whiteboard, using a wide-angle lens to capture whatever is drawn and then streams that feed into the meeting software. In practice, it works best when the board is well lit and the markers are dark, high-contrast colors. During a brainstorming session where we used thick black markers, the whiteboard feed was crisp enough that remote participants could read the notes without asking for a screenshot. If you tend to use pastel colors or a low-light conference room, you'll notice the image gets a bit grainy and the software sometimes has to enhance the content, which can introduce a slight lag. Now, who should actually consider buying this bundle? If you run a small to medium team that meets virtually at least 3 times a week, and you already have a decent internet connection, the Owl can replace a separate webcam, speakerphone, and document camera. It also shines for educators who need a quick way to share handwritten equations or diagrams without setting up a separate capture device. The fact that it works with virtually any web-based video platform means you won't be locked into a single ecosystem, which is a relief for companies that switch between Zoom for client calls and Teams for internal meetings. On the other hand, there are clear cases where the Owl is overkill. Large conference rooms that already have ceiling-mounted cameras and dedicated audio mixers will probably find the Owl redundant, and the price point may not justify replacing existing infrastructure. Also, if your meetings are mostly one-to-one calls where the visual element is just a face-to-face chat, you'll likely get similar results from a high-quality USB webcam paired with a separate microphone. The Owl's automatic focus is less valuable when there's only one speaker. A practical weakness that emerged during our testing was the reliance on the Owl software for the automatic focus algorithm. The app occasionally missed a speaker who was on the far right of the room, especially if they were speaking softly or if there was background noise from a coffee machine. In those moments, you have to manually select the speaker from the companion app, which breaks the hands-free promise. It's not a deal-breaker, but it does mean you should be comfortable with a little extra interaction when the AI isn't perfect. Another consideration is the physical footprint. The Meeting Owl 3 sits on a tabletop and the Whiteboard Owl adds a small ring around the board. In cramped meeting rooms, you'll need to allocate a few extra inches of desk space, which can be a nuisance if you already have a laptop, notepads, and a coffee mug sharing the same surface. The device does have a built-in stand, but it's not adjustable, so you'll have to make sure the table height matches the optimal viewing angle. When it comes to value for money, the bundle sits in the mid-4-figure range. The headline price can feel steep, but think of it as consolidating 3 separate pieces of equipment into one. If you factor in the cost of a PTZ camera, often $600, $800, a separate speakerphone, $200, $300, and